Welcome
Hello,
back.
welcome to Falcons Central Radio Show on the Pro Football Central Radio Network. I'm Aaron Freeman. Co-host is Scott Karasik. We talk about the Falcons this week. We're going to talk a little bit about the Falcons' loss to the New York Giants. I almost forgot who we lost to. And this upcoming game against the Chicago Bears. We'll answer your mailbag questions. And we brought along a friend of ours, Aaron Leming. He covers the Chicago Bears for Cover32.com. And he'll help us figure out these Bears, and hopefully, we'll find a way to get the Falcons back in the win column, even though I'm sure Aaron feels a little bit differently about that. But So, Aaron, we want to thank you for being on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And I guess first I need to ask you, did you get an opportunity to watch much of the Falcons-Giants game?
I did not. They played same time as the Bears, and I was too busy yelling at the TV and watching Cam Newton come back and tear apart the secondary. So didn't quite get a chance to catch it.
Okay, well, I didn't get to see the Bears-Panthers game, so I guess we'll end up balancing each other out there. All right, Scott. What do we, I guess we should talk a little bit about some of the news that came out today before we get into the Giants and the Bears game. Do you have any thoughts on the Falcons promoting Freddie Martino and cutting Courtney Roby?
Courtney Roby, we hardly knew ye, and I kind of saw that one coming because he wasn't very good. Freddie Martino, I like the move. I think, and don't quote me on this, I think Martino had been contacted by another team, and that's why he's now on the Falcons' active roster. Because, let's put it this way, you don't just let go of a guy like Courtney Roby, who's been playing special teams for you pretty well for the past 5 games, for a guy who's a undrafted rookie out of North Greenville. Unless another team says, you know what, we kind of liked what this guy put on film. So, Freddie Martino, if you're active, good luck. I hope you provide good special teams. I hope you catch some passes and can provide more than what Harry Douglas can, because you're probably a better natural receiver than Eric Williams or Drew Davis is at this point. So, let's see what you can do, because watching him against North Greenville, he looked like Roddy White back in 2007. But to be fair, he was playing at North Greenville.
Yeah. I never even heard of that school until we signed him.
It's Division II. You're not supposed to hear about it.
The fact that it's Division II surprised me. I thought it was like NAIA or something like that.
Yeah, it is. That's Division II.
Okay. There you go. All right. Well, I don't have much else to add to that. I think you probably see Martino stick around for a couple of weeks, and then, they'll probably bring Drew Davis off the PUP, and that'll probably be Martino back to the practice squad. So we'll see how that goes. But, Scott, what are your big thoughts on the Giants game?
I mean, I was impressed with how the offensive line held up for the first half. I thought they did a pretty good job. I know you weren't exactly a fan of what Gabe Karimi did, but I thought he held up and wasn't too much of a drop-off from Holmes. I don't know. I mean, it's tough to dislike what Karimi did because he was able to seal that edge. He looked good next to Asamoah. He looked like he'd been practicing at the position for the whole week, unlike the previous times he was in. So I don't know. I like what Karimi brings to the table, and I think he's someone who can be a long-term solution at right tackle as he continues to get healthy, as he continues to get his knee better, because he's still been fighting from that knee injury that he suffered a couple years back. Now, you keep saying he's about what Jeremy Trueblood was last year, and I shockingly, and I say that sarcastically, disagree.
Okay.
because he's way quicker than Trueblood was last year. Way quicker. He and Holmes are about the same speed, honestly. I'm not expecting this guy to handle speed rushers with ease, but he can at least derail them and use his power to throw them on their butt for a second. I mean, he's a right tackle, and he's a pure right tackle, and I think he's been looking pretty good out there. I think he looks much better than the Karimi that was with the Bears for the past 5 years. I'll put it that way.
Well, I'm sure Aaron will tell us that that's not that hard to do since he was, pretty bad.
Yeah, Karimi was actually pretty good his rookie year up until he went down with an injury in New Orleans, and he had injury issues before that. I think it was actually that same knee in college, so it just derailed everything. And unfortunately, when he got cut, it was just such a thing as Mark Trestman coming in, new regime, new GM. Jerry Angelo was a Jerry Angelo pick, and unfortunately, a lot of first-round picks didn't work out for Angelo, which is one of the reasons he's not the GM anymore. So I do think with his current state, and I think I remember his arms being a little on the shorter side, I think he could be better fit for maybe, inside. But I haven't really seen too much of the Falcons to really know, how he's doing this year.
He's done pretty good this year. I mean, he's been, for use of a better word, competent. He's been average. He's been exactly what the Falcons need to keep Matt Ryan upright for 4 seconds so that Matt Ryan can deliver the ball downfield to his boy Julio. That's what he's been so far, when he's been in. And he's been sealing the edge on run blocks pretty decently. Much better than Lamar Holmes was, because as much as Holmes improved as a pass blocker, Holmes is still an awful run blocker. And it sucks that Holmes went down with a foot injury, but it is what it is. And I thought he played pretty well at left guard for the series he was in up until Joe Hawley went out in Minnesota.
Yeah, he's definitely got the. I think he's got a little bit better of a build inside, but then again, we're not talking about the blind side, protector here. As far as right tackle, I think he can be at least serviceable, like you're saying. I think he should probably, he's probably a better run blocker than he is a pass blocker. But he's worked with Mike Tice before, so this isn't the first time. So that'll definitely help him out a little bit.
Well, he did well as a pass blocker this past weekend, and I realized Aaron's like, oh, his technique was awful, and he looks sluggish, and I didn't see that on film from the broadcast angle. I'm going to go back and watch the All-22 for the offense this week, but I've been working on an article on the defense just trying to figure out what the hell is wrong with it. And I don't know, I saw him fighting, and he looked good, honestly. I thought he did well against Kiwanuka, who is a lot quicker than Karimi is. I thought he did well against Ayers for the most part on the outside, outside of a play or two. And I thought he did pretty well against Montre Moore, the couple snaps that Moore lined up against him. But, I mean, it's tough to be like, hey, this guy sucks when you don't see him out there getting destroyed every play. You can't sit there and call it the guy sucks when he's not getting destroyed or, I don't know. It's tough to be like, hey, Karimi's awful when you saw Jeremy Trueblood and Ryan Schrader look like rookies last year. Though, to be fair, one of them was a rookie. But to see them get knocked on their butt every other play, it's nice seeing a right tackle stand up right and hold the width of the pocket.
I'll say this about Karimi. I don't think he played poorly. I think relative to other offensive linemen we had, he probably had one of the better games on the offensive line. I guess the issue I had with Karimi is, there were a lot of times where his speed came into question. And I think Scott knows this, that, I wasn't the biggest fan of what Lamar Holmes was putting on tape before he got injured. And I think a lot of what looks decent is because Matt Ryan's basically had a clean pocket because he's had a, really good interior line play up until this past week, where he could basically Karimi or Holmes or whoever could get beat by speed off the edge, and then Ryan would just slide up in the pocket, which is, perfectly fine. But I think it makes some of our tackle play look better than it actually is, just because, Matt Ryan can kind of maneuver around their poor blocking. I think what Aaron said, Karimi is a better run blocker than he is a pass protector. I do think he's probably better suited to play guard. I just think his foot speed is real slow. It's just like Ayers, whether it was Ayers, Moore, or Kiwanuka, just were consistently beating him off the snap, and he was just barely, being able to get a hand on him. And I think as we get further into the season, when he faces a lot better pass rushers than those three guys, possibly this week with Willie Young and Lamar Houston, I think it's going to be a situation where it won't look as pretty as it may have looked relatively against the Giants.
Well, go ahead, Scott.
I was going to say, doesn't Young play the right side of the field?
Young's actually the rotational defensive end. He's you got Jared Allen, who lost 15 pounds. They say he gained back about 5. You can look at him. You can look at his jersey. He's probably 245, 250 right now. He hasn't done really much all year as far as the pass rush goes. And you got Lamar Houston over on the right side. They've been sliding him inside on passing downs and putting, Willie Young. Sometimes he's over on the right side. Sometimes he's on the left side. So the problem with the Bears pass rush that you guys will start seeing this week is it's very inconsistent. They'll have, a drive or two where it's okay, and then they'll have about 4 or 5 drives where it's just not. So I think you guys are going to be a little surprised with Karimi this week. I think he's going to look a little bit better than he did last week just because of how inconsistent pass rushing is. Now, going to Gabe Karimi, the one thing I will say is I remember back in the 2012 season, it was actually the year that Jay Cutler got hurt in the Houston Texans game. He actually shut down J.J. Watt very well in that game. Looked absolutely great, gave a lot of fans, including myself, some serious hope. And then, I don't know if you remember, the next game after that against San Francisco where Aldon Smith had the 4 or 5 or 6 sacks. I can't remember how many it was. So it's just consistency has been a big thing for him. That knee injury has always, has been an issue since he's came back from that. But I do think he can be serviceable, and I do think he will look good this week.
Okay, some positivity. I like that.
I mean, that's how I've been feeling about Karimi for the past couple of weeks. I like Karimi. Maybe it's just because I'm a fellow member of the tribe, but I think that he's got a very, very solid future in Atlanta. He could be a Jewish Claybo if they give him some time. And Claybo wasn't that quick either, Aaron, so you can't even say anything about that.
That's true, but,
He was technically sound, and he somehow was able to pass, block, and protect. I don't know. I feel like the biggest addition that Atlanta made this year was John Asamoah. Well, and Jake Matthews. Those two guys have really solidified that line. But I feel like Jake Matthews has had trouble without Blaylock next to him. Keep in mind, in the Matt Ryan era, Justin Blaylock hadn't missed a single snap. Yeah. Literally played every single snap from the first down Matt Ryan played in 2008 all the way until he went down in the Vikings game.
Yeah.
That's a streak. That's a great streak. That's not something you can make up either. Like, that dude was just an Iron Man. But it wears down.
Yeah. Blaylock wasn't always great as a blocker, but he was very consistent. You could always rely on him. If he was a C+ player, sometimes he was a C+ player, sometimes he was a B- player, but you could always consistently rely on him being that guy each week, which is, may not be the greatest thing in the world, but I'll take it,
Above average as a pass protector, average as a run blocker. That's the best way to describe Justin Blaylock. And if every single team had a Justin Blaylock on it, they would be perfectly happy because they knew they'd get consistent, solid line play from that guy every single down that he's in. And that's what Atlanta was missing this past week with Harlan Gunn. And as much as I like Harlan Gunn, the run blocker, because he's a really good run blocker,
yep,
he is a terrible terrible pass protector.
Yeah, he was pretty bad. He was pretty bad.
And on the flip side, Peter Kahns honestly looked pretty decent in pass protection. But
yeah,
he wasn't doing one-on-ones.
yeah, that kind of saves you. You don't have to block Hankins and Cullen Jenkins one-on-one, because if he had, he would have been in trouble.
Let's put it this way. He had John Asamoah handling his business at right guard, looking way better than anybody he ever played next to beforehand, because Garrett Reynolds is pretty garbage. Anyway, now that Giants game review, not enough Massaquoi, not enough Mapanga. Mapanga didn't even get a snap. What the hell?
Yeah, well, it's a broken record on this show, Aaron. I know you probably haven't been watching the last couple episodes, but pretty much every week Scott and I talk about how certain players on our defensive line and our outside linebacker, I guess, don't play when they should, when they're better than the veteran guys like OC and Corey Bierman.
But my boy Kamal did pretty good this week.
He did.
You got to give it up to Kamal Ishmael. He surprisingly looked good in coverage. And it wasn't just because they were playing Tampa Bay.
Yeah, he did a pretty good job against Larry Donnell, or however you say his name. I noticed the Falcons were trying to chuck him early in the game at the line of scrimmage, and after a certain point, they just kind of forgot about him because, Odell Beckham was giving them plenty to worry about by the end of the game. But
but between Larry Donnell and Adrian Robinson, they combined for one catch for 5 yards. The Bears have Marty Bennett, who is just nasty this year. Do you think a similar strategy would work against him?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time? You kind of cut out there.
Oh, I was going to say the Bears have Marty Bennett.
Mm-hmm.
Falcons this past week were basically Troy Bierman was knocking Donnell at the line. Warlow was dropping back and covering a mid zone, and then Kamal Ishmael was over the top providing the speed help on Larry Donnell.
With the thing that I've been noticing, man, it's very, very frustrating as a Bears fan watching this. We've got three guys that are over 6'3", and that's Alshon Jeffrey, Brandon Marshall, and of course Martellus Bennett at 6'6". And for whatever reason, Mark Trestman has decided that short intermediate routes and just very poorly designed run plays are really good, first, second down plays or third and long plays. So in the process of that, you've had Brandon Marshall, who's got 11 targets over the past 2 games, which is very much down. I mean, he's only got 188 yards. So it's put a lot more pressure on Martellus Bennett now. Martellus Bennett looks good as far as the stats go. He had, a good month of September, but he's very known to fall off in October and November and kind of, come back a little bit in December. And that's kind of what we saw on Sunday with him is he dropped a very crucial pass on a third down play that we ended up having to settle for a field goal attempt, which Robbie Gould missed. That was 21-7 at that point. So the biggest issue with Martellus Bennett is he gets frustrated. Sometimes he is a big guy and he tries doing too much. So he get the ball 5-6 yards down the field and he tries to get a little too ballerina-esque with the ball. So the biggest thing with Martellus Bennett is he's going to be open, but if you are physical with him, he's more prone to dropping passes. It's going to be such a thing as if you shut down the deep ball and keep everything short and intermediate, the Bears are going to be stuck in neutral. And it's been a common theme all year long, minus the second half in the 49ers game. It's just, I don't know what it is, but they just can't seem to get over the hump and get past that. Mark Trestman has not been making good second half adjustments, and the play calling has been setting the offense up for a very very long second and third downs, which is, both of you guys know that's just not a recipe for success on offense, regardless of how good your team is.
So Atlanta might actually have some success because they're designed for long second and third downs where they can blitz and create havoc that way, because that's how they beat the Buccaneers.
Yeah, and that's a big thing, too, with Jermon Bushrod being out at left tackle last week. I'll be completely honest and say I understated his value. I've never thought overly highly of him. I think he's a good left tackle, but I don't think he was deserving of a Pro Bowl. I think that's kind of more of a popularity contest. But I got to say, Michael Olah being out at left tackle and Matt Slauson, the whole entire left side of the line, Matt Slauson come back off the high ankle sprain. They had a lot of problems with pass protection, and there was a lot of blitzes dial up. And this is the second week of the season that you've seen all-out blitzes that they can telegraph it, and for whatever reason, the Bears just cannot pick it up. And as you guys have seen with Cutler plenty of times, you put pressure on him, he's either going to take a sack when he can get rid of the ball, or he's going to throw an interception. And
which we hope it's the second one to Desmond Trufant and Robert Alford and my boy Kamal, who's already run one back this year.
Yeah, it's I keep saying this, and it's just kind of not holding true so far this year. He doesn't usually have back-to-back questionable games, and he's having a career year except for yards. He's on pace for 38 touchdowns and 19 interceptions and a 94.9 quarterback rating, which is would be a career high for him. But he's making bad mistakes at crucial times in the game. So I think the Falcons statistically are a little bit worse than the Bears defensively, but I think stylistically this is a pretty good matchup for the Falcons. On both sides of the ball, the Bears still don't have very good defense, very soft. In the middle of the field, play a very soft zone for the most part. Absolutely, no pressure from the defensive line. They're dialing up the same double-A gap blitz, once again telegraphing it, and linebacker play hasn't been that good, and Charles Tillman going down's really hurt them too.
Okay. Well, Aaron, I'll give you a little bit of hope. Despite how bad maybe Michael Olah has been, the Falcons are probably going to put O.C. Umenyiora against them, and O.C. is very much a shell of the former player that he once was. And the last couple of weeks, the Falcons have had some opportunities against some pretty weak offensive linemen against the Vikings and the Giants. John Jerry for the Giants, Vlad Dukas for the Vikings, and Matt Khalil's been struggling there. And the Falcons' pass rush pretty much was non-existent against those guys, throwing out O.C. and Corey Bierman, and sadly to say, Babineau. Seems like whatever he had left in the tank just evaporated. Tyson Jackson, obviously.
They're playing Babineau in the wrong spot. You've got a guy who's a monster 3 technique for years, and you're going to play him out at 7 technique defensive end in a 4-man front and expect him to get pressure on a left tackle? That's just stupid.
Yeah.
It's just dumb. Like that's a Mike Smith call. That's not a Mike Nolan call. You can see that Smitty doing something stupid to try and save his job by putting his favorite guy on the field as much as possible. But come on, man. That's just dumb.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we had this debate on this show before, Scott, about how much of it is talent, how much of it is coaching. I think it's a little bit of both. I think, especially against the Bears, I think it was a lot more coaching than it probably was.
Giants?
Did I say the Giants? I'm sorry, the Giants. Yeah, we'll see about what happens against the Bears. I'm already looking forward to next week. That's why I keep slipping like that.
Oh yeah, because we got Jess coming on next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one thing I have noticed about just kind of looking to see what the Falcons defense have done so far this year, I do see that they have 4 sacks, but the one thing I do see it's pretty comparable with the Bears is the amount of pressures, 56. I know at least to my knowledge, this is the first year of the transition to the 3-4, if I'm not mistaken.
Pretty much.
And then
really. They're not really running any defense. They're running this 4-2-5 crap that doesn't work against the run, doesn't work against the pass. They line up in it. You've got two guys playing inside linebacker, trying to do the job of three guys, and they don't have the speed to do the job of three guys. If you had three full linebackers out there, or at least had, that fourth guy on the edge, it'd be different. But they're not running a real defense right now. That's the issue.
Yeah, they're not as 3-4 as at least people were expecting them to be this year.
Sounds a lot like the Bears. The Bears are supposed to be a 4-3 hybrid, and it's been a very, very, very basic vanilla 4-3 zone look for the most part. We have guys like Tim Jennings that had 2 back-to-back Pro Bowl years. He had a down year last year, regardless of what people want to think, but he has been absolutely getting burned. He's playing 5-6 yards back, and Kyle Fuller has you see the headlines of him making plays, and that's well and fine, but Mel Tucker is not setting him up for success. He's also playing in a very soft zone, and to the point to where what you're seeing him do is really his playmaking ability and not a coach that's setting him up for success. So I guess that is a high point, but I do understand the not really knowing what's going on defense. There was empty promises, and it's only 5 games in the season so far, but at the same time, things have not shaped up the way I figured they would. It sounds like you guys are feeling a lot the same way about the Falcons.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in Falcon land going, fire Mike Smith, fire Thomas Dimitrov, bring in somebody, we need something to happen, blah, blah, blah. Cut Corey Bierman, get a spark, blah, blah, blah. Just a lot of people not very happy. The only sentiment that I've tended to agree with is cut Corey Bierman. Other than that, there's really nothing you can do.
Yeah, that's definitely share that same sentiment with the Bears right now. Unfortunately, I think on their end of things, I'm starting to wonder if Mark Trestman may have been a mistake as a hire for head coach. He was a great offensive mind. That's what his label was, but he's not really showing that he can be a head coach and give his team the opportunity to win games without costing them. So yeah, it's a lot the same. Both teams are 2-3. There's definitely some disappointment on both sides, especially with the way both teams started off pretty well. I do think it's going to probably be a shootout. Something a lot of people don't understand about the Bears this year is the fact that they haven't scored over 30 points once this season. So that's a big thing, and when they are scoring points, they're doing enough of turnovers with short fields. Their offense really hasn't moved the ball as well as it should, especially with the offensive weapons. Matt Forte is starting to pick it up a little bit. He had 11 12 receptions last week, which is good to a certain extent, but at the same time, when Brandon Marshall has 2 catches and things are just getting shut down, and you gotta make some adjustments. So it'll be should be an interesting game to see how both defenses play. Neither are very good, but both have the talent. They just it sounds at least with the Bears, I think they're more lacking scheme than they are talent. And it sounds like it may be a little bit more, a little bit of the same with the Falcons.
Aaron, I have a question about the Bears offense, because going into this season, I kind of had high expectations with the Bears. And, I thought pound for pound, if you look at least their starting 11 going into this year, they look like they should have been the best offense in the league. So I guess my question is, what is the cause of their problems? Is it because suddenly their offensive line is a little beat up? Is it because Marshall's getting hurt? Is it because Cutler's taking a step back? Is Forte looking old? What's exactly you think is some of the problems that the Bears are facing on offense?
Well, the biggest thing definitely has to be the health. You look at last year, the Bears' offensive line, they had the same 5 stars for all 16 games. Granted, Jordan Mills did go down at I think it was in the first quarter of Week 17. And so far, Bears fans have seen a total of about 2 quarters with their starting 5 offensive linemen. Slauson came back last week. Garza is still kind of questionable. He practiced last week, but there was nothing there. So Michael Olah has stepped in, did a pretty good job for the most part. So that's definitely a big part of it. You also had Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey go down in the first week. Jeffrey pulled a hamstring. He wasn't really right until week 3, week 4. Brandon Marshall, he proclaimed himself 100%. You can look at him and just see that he's definitely not. So, and that's one of the things that I actually had pulled up was the fact that so far this year, the Marshall and Jeffrey were the second receiving tandem last year, right behind Eric Decker and Demaryius Thomas. And you look at it this year, and so far, Marshall doesn't even have 200 yards. Alshon Jeffrey he's averaging about 70 yards a game. Between them, they got 7 touchdowns. They're looking at about 45 receptions total, 54 actual receptions. And then you look over at Matt Forte and Martellus Bennett, and between them, they've got more yards, more receptions, and just almost just as many touchdowns. So some of it's the play calling. Some of it's definitely been the protection. Matt Forte he had a good week 1, but he stalled badly against the 49ers, which was remotely expected, and the Jets shut him down as well. So it's just been inconsistency up front, and I think that goes for both sides, defensively and offensively. Especially defensively, I mean, they've had their starting 4 that was supposed to start off the year have played a total of 6 quarters together. And you just can't expect continued success if you don't have the continuity with all your players healthy, and that's one thing that they got really lucky with last year.
Okay. So you think it's more so that last year they kind of overachieved and now they've kind of fallen back a little bit to earth, or you think it's underachieving this year?
I think it's a little bit of a mixture. I think Mark Trestman came in last year and did a very good job with the play calling. He took advantage of Alshon Jeffrey, down the field. And that's something we haven't really seen a lot of this year with them. Is the play calling is just not consistent. It's not holding up to what it should be. When you're getting put in, first and second down and longs, I mean, you're not going to have success, and that's just been a big thing. Cutler's been hit a little bit more than he should be. He's taken a few more sacks than he should be. Like I said, he's having a career year, but his mistakes are coming at big times, and he's fumbled a few times as well. So it's really a combination of not having the health, especially with your 2 big receivers, the offensive line, and also Mark Trestman's ability to adjust. It seems like the league's figured it out a little bit, and he hasn't quite figured out, how to get past that. So that's been a big issue.
So the Falcons have 2 of the better young corners in the league, and Desmond Trufant and Robert Alford. Both guys are young, 24, 25 years old. Both guys are pretty physical, very fast. Do you think that them going against Jeffrey and Marshall favors Atlanta, or do you think that's the matchup that favors the Bears right now?
Well, I think we saw a little bit last week that the bigger physical corners, that's definitely would be an advantage to Atlanta right now, especially with I don't know if it's a certain mindset that Marshall's in or what the deal is, but he's getting passes forced to him, and he's just not. He's running a lot of intermediate routes, and he's not getting open downfield over the middle of the field like he should. Especially last week with Carolina, both of their corners, Josh Norman was 6'1", and I can't remember their other corner, but he was also 6 foot. And you weren't seeing those jump balls, and you weren't seeing those deep passes won. So yeah, as far as the biggest thing with the Bears' offense is that they're physically dominating, and especially with their receivers. Matt Forte is a big running back, and obviously Martellus Bennett, Brandon Marshall, and Alshon Jeffrey are big guys. But when they don't have that size advantage, they're not fast.
Well, Trufon's not really huge. He's only about 6. He's 6 foot, like, on the dot. But Alford's the small one of the pairing. He's only 5'10", 5'11", but he's fast. He ran a 4.34 at the combine.
Yeah,
So
it's.
Do you think that the speed advantage is going to be there, and that's what's going to make it a little easier for Atlanta?
As far as the speed goes, I mean, like I said, the Bears don't really have that vertical threat. It's more of a physical brand is what seems to get them. Even at 5'10", 5'11", and 6 foot, it's still better than what they've been facing. Especially with the Jets. The Jets had corners that were 5'7", 5'8", and that was more of an advantage for the Bears. And you look at a lot of the corners in the NFC North, and that's where the main advantage comes from, especially with guys, Alshon Jeffrey, for example, with his vertical, he doesn't have good speed, but the vertical threat that he possesses is the fact that he can get downfield on the sideline and basically physically dominate, the corner and jump over him. But with these other, you get guys close to the same size as him and, physically dominating, and they get pushed off the route a lot. And that's something that the Bears actually saw in their last game, that last interception by Cutler. We had Santonio Holmes got pushed off his route and flew right over his head and right to the safety. So it's just, you look at the names, the receivers for the Bears, and you see Santonio Holmes and Josh Morgan along with the other weapons that the Bears have, and on paper that looks really good, but they're just very, very one-dimensional right now, and especially if Atlanta can find a way to shut the run game down early, Cutler's going to make mistakes.
We talked about receivers being one-dimensional. Falcons are kind of in the same boat. Obviously Julio Jones is Julio Jones. But, similar to what you were talking about with Brandon Marshall, Roddy White has not looked anything close to what the Roddy White we've grown accustomed to over the last 7 years. And basically he was an afterthought. Pretty much every game. He's made a couple of nice catches here and there, but he just is not separating from coverage. Devin Hester has been a speed threat, and when he's been able to get behind the defense, he's put he's done some real damage. But against the Giants, he had a lot of trouble separating, and he had to make some contested catches in traffic. And I'm sure, Aaron, you're well aware that that's not exactly Hester's strength. And then, of course, the Falcons have Harry Douglas coming back at some point, and that's pretty much been the story on Harry Douglas. And I think one of the things that's been not overlooked about Harry Douglas, because he hasn't been playing a whole lot, so people haven't really it's not been on the front of people's minds. But on tape, he looks a lot slower than Harry Douglas used to be. And I've been a passionate, critic of Harry Douglas over the years, but one thing that he did always have was good speed and good burst that he could separate from guys underneath, and he looks like he's really struggling to do that now. So I'm definitely very concerned about the Falcons wide receiver core if the Bears are basically able to contain Julio Jones, because no one can shut him down. But basically every team up until now is basically we're just going to double Julio every time and force these other guys to beat us. And when we had a week like last week against the Giants where Matt Ryan was seeing pressure, he pretty much, if he wasn't throwing it to Julio Jones, he was checking it down every play. And if the Bears can get the Falcons can do that, then I think their defense may, for once, look a lot better than it has so far this year.
Yeah, I think I definitely can see the concern, but the one thing that a lot of people don't get, especially with Charles Tillman going down, is that the Bears really only have one corner on the roster, and especially with the recent cut of Isaiah Friday, their slot corner. Since Tillman's gone down, they only have Tim Jennings, who's been a consistent starter in the league. I mean, they have Kyle Fuller, who's obviously a rookie, and then they have Sherrick McManus, who's been a special teams ace for them, who showed a lot in preseason, enough probably to start on the outside. The Bears will probably play pretty close to, I'd say, especially for the type of offense that Atlanta's going to run, I'd guess nickel is probably going to be 60, 70, maybe even 80% of the game. So you're going to see a lot of Tim Jennings in the slot, and I would imagine Sherrick McManus is going to be outside. But with that being said, the Bears don't have a very good safety tandem. Their corners have been a little bit questionable as of late, especially with Tillman going down. Fuller's been playing good, but like I said, with the soft zone that they play, it's been tough. And the one big thing that a lot of people don't take into account when they look at the Bears is the mediocrity that's a nice way of putting it with their linebacking core. Lance Briggs is more of a name at this point. DJ Williams will go a game or two without making a tackle. And John Bostic has been pretty good, but he's a second-year player, and he looks about like a fourth-round pick from last year, even though he was a second. So, Devin Hester is going to come out with some emotion. I can guarantee that. Now, the question I have for you is I was a big Harry Douglas fan last year, mainly because of fantasy. He got me a good amount of points. Now, do you think that maybe the Devin Hester move, especially with him playing a little bit more slot, has been any slap in the face at all to Harry Douglas after the year that he had last year?
I hate to say it, but I really don't care what Harry Douglas thinks. This is the NFL. It's not about making friends or making sure Harry Douglas is happy. It's about making sure the Atlanta Falcons are the best team they can be. And if Harry Douglas is the number 4 wide receiver in the offense and Roddy White plays the 3rd wide receiver and you end up starting Devin Hester at number 2 because that ends up being your best number 2 receiver, you do it. You don't care about feelings. You get results. You get work done. Maybe I'm just results-oriented, and maybe that's the way I view things, but at this point, I really don't care if Troy Bierman's happy, if Harry Douglas is happy, if, Patrick DeMarco is happy, because if they're happy and the team's losing, it's pointless. You're only allowed to be happy if the team's winning.
I definitely agree. I think, I guess maybe I didn't really word the question very well. Do you think maybe with him feeling the way that he is, do you think that may be one of the main reasons why he hasn't been as effective as he was last year? Because it seemed like he kind of had a coming out party last year. I mean, he was a prime target for them last year. Granted, obviously Julio went down, but I was expecting big things from him. I feel seeing Hester, he's inconsistent, and especially his hands are very inconsistent. And yeah, he can make plays because of his speed, but like Aaron was saying, if he gets shut down, I mean, he's not a guy that's going to go up and get the ball for you. He's a burn, turn and burn type receiver. So at some point in time, I would think that Harry Douglas would want, need to be a part of the dynamic offense.
I don't see Harry Douglas needing to be a part of anything, honestly. I like Harry Douglas as a person. I don't think he's this crucial, critical player you're trying to make him out to be, though. He's Harry Douglas. He's there. He does his job. He plays his role well. But he's the kind of guy that Falcons fans have been calling for people to replace him for years because he's very easily replaceable. There's multiple guys that could come in and fill in and do Harry Douglas's role just as well as Harry Douglas does.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing about Harry Douglas last season, a lot of his production came late in games when the Falcons were down 2 or 3 scores and going into the 3rd or 4th quarter, and basically the opposing defense were just like, all right, we'll back off, and they can catch these 7-yard digs and curls and stuff, and they can eat and they have those all day, and we'll just when they get to the red zone, they'll grind to a halt. And that's basically how Harry Douglas padded his numbers last year. And I mean, I guess the issue with Harry Douglas now is if Falcons have been able to rely on Roddy White to basically when we needed to get if it was 3rd and 7 and we needed to get 8 yards, we could rely on Roddy White to be that guy, and he hasn't been that guy this year. And so now it puts a little bit more pressure on Harry Douglas to sort of step up, which is, as Falcons fans, as Scott was saying, is not really the place you want to be if you're relying on Harry Douglas, because up until last year and really throughout last year, despite his production, he's not a reliable guy that you can say, okay, I can go to Harry Douglas in this situation, he's going to get open and make the grab. Pretty much anytime he's playing press coverage, he's going to get beat. Anytime he has to outmuscle a guy on a slant, he's going to get beat. He's basically been our version of Devin Hester, the way Devin Hester was in Chicago, where every year he was disappointing. It's like, why can't Hester be this big-time playmaker? And Douglas has basically been the same way. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So do you think Roddy White's struggles are due to his age and just, going downhill, or is it just a slow start?
Yes.
I would say injuries have been contributing because he just, especially against the Vikings, he could not separate at all. And he just could not come out of his breaks at all. And it led to 2 interceptions because he just was incapable of finishing routes. I think part of it is, he went through some stuff this offseason. His brother got killed. I'm sure that probably didn't have his head in a good place going into training camp and OTAs. So maybe he wasn't as in the best shape or mentally all there, and sort of hopefully this first month of the season basically is acting as a preseason for him because, Roddy doesn't really care about preseason and he didn't really put any effort on during the summer. So I don't know, but
Roddy doesn't always have the quickest of starts throughout his entire career. He's never really been the guy who's going to come out the first 4 games. At least the past 3 years, he hasn't really been that guy that comes out the first 4 games and just dominates and rules all and destroys ass like some other guys can. I mean, that's the only way I know how to put it.
Hopefully he gets better because we need him to get better.
Yes.
Well, I think it does speak volumes about the Falcons' offense, at the fact that right now, they're ranked 3rd in total yards, average, and 3rd in points per game, and they're really running with, I guess Devin Hester, from what I've seen, has been a pretty good weapon, but the fact that Roddy White's not even going, that alone, at least to me, if I was a Falcons fan, would be some optimism right there, I guess you could call it.
It's all Julio and Anton Smith, pretty much. Pretty much every yard and then the occasional 50-yard play from Devin Hester.
Yeah.
That's pretty much our offense.
Which is why Falcons fans are going, give Anton Smith the ball, because a guy who has 17 touches for 277 yards and 4 touchdowns probably needs to see the ball more. Let's give him that many touches every game, which I'm completely down for, but I don't know about everybody else.
Yeah, that's
in the passing game.
Well, that's what and it's funny because I think unfortunately I got to watch the Falcons absolutely destroy the Buccaneers, and got to see Devin Hester break the record, which was great. But that's really about the only Falcons game I've seen so far this year. And it's funny, you guys describing, I look at the numbers for the Falcons, and I look at what they've done and how they looked in that game. Obviously, that was a very good game for them. But I look at the numbers and I hear what you guys are saying, and it seems like these teams are a lot alike in a lot of different ways. Especially they're leaning on offenses, waiting for defenses to show up, and I think that's really going to lead to quite the offensive battle, come Sunday. And I don't know if the time change, the moving it back 3.5 hours is gonna mess anything up. And luckily, the Bears aren't a West Coast team, so I don't think that'll come into play. But Matt Ryan, as you guys well know, is very, very good at home, and weirdly enough, the Bears have been a lot better on the road lately. So
it's an inside versus outside thing more than anything else, if you want the honest to God's truth. Matt Ryan indoors has an 101 passer rating, but outdoors he's at an 81.4. Under Coach Smith, the Falcons are 62-39. Sorry, they're 45-18 indoors, and that includes last year when they went 4-6 indoors. So that still includes a bad season. Or they're 17-21 outside.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think it's going to be an interesting game because we look at those two games the Falcons and Bears played in was 08 and 09 that basically came down to like the last play of the game that decided the outcome of the game. And then, what was it, the 2011 opener where the Bears just blew out the Falcons. So I'm kind of expecting the game to be more like the other two games where it pretty much comes down to the last drive of the game. And when the Falcons are at home, Matt Ryan, most of his fourth quarter comebacks come in the Georgia Dome. So that certainly gives the Falcons a leg up. If it's a competitive game going into the fourth quarter, then you probably won't be feeling too well, Aaron. But if you guys can get out to that lead that y'all had a couple of years ago early, then that kind of puts the Falcons in a hole. They're not a great comeback team because their defense has been pretty much terrible. And so once the opposing offense gets any sort of momentum, it's pretty much over. It's a wrap.
Yeah, I relate this upcoming game a lot to the Bears and Packers games, and I mean I don't know what Bears fans you've talked to, but a lot of them make excuses for why the game was 38-17. They can say the officials made some bad calls, but you don't lose by 21 points by accident. It doesn't happen that way. But I see it a lot the same way with this week. Both teams definitely not looking too good right now. I definitely give the edge offensively to the Falcons. Defensively, I think it's kind of a toss-up at this point. I mean, you look at the numbers, and yeah, the Bears have a little bit better numbers, but you look at some of the offenses that they played, and losing to the Bills, that was a big loss, and set the tone to open up the year.
If it's defensively a toss-up, that's kind of sad for the Bears because the Falcons' defense has been garbage this year.
It's one of those things that, like I said, the Bears have a lot more talent on defense, and this is, I literally go to sleep at night wondering how Mel Tucker is getting similar product to last year with probably twice as much talent. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. The only you look at the defensive ends, and Lamar Houston, he's not a pass rusher. I understand that. And he's getting, a pretty good amount of pressures, and him and Jared Allen don't have a sack between them. And then you look at their second-round pick, who's a defensive tackle, Ego Ferguson, and he was known as a guy that's just a run stuffer. And he's already, I think he has 2 or 3 sacks. And it's like you look at where the pass rushes come from, and it's inconsistent. But the problem is the zone defense that they play, and they play so soft that if they're not on the quarterback every play, then it's going to be bad, and it is sad, and it sucks because as a Bears fan, I went in this season very hopeful that things were going to turn around, and when you're looking at the amount of talent that the Bears have. And the product that they're putting out, I mean, they're not in a good position, and I don't see it getting any better anytime soon.
Ego Ferguson was a pretty good pass rusher in college. He just ate a lot of double teams. So when you got a guy like Stephen Paya next to him, that helps out quite a bit. Because Paya eats a lot of double teams. Even though he's not a great pass rusher, he eats a lot of double teams, and he looks good, and he's an asset in pass rush. And Lamar Houston can play that 3 technique pretty well. He may not be a great outside rusher, but he does create pressure because he's got a great first step.
The problem with Houston at the 3 technique position is the fact that right now he's sitting right around 260 pounds. And it was something that Hub Arkush, the Bears writer, had talked about before and keeps kind of forcing it, is the fact that he needs to be sliding inside more. He needs to become a permanent 3 tech, and it just, to me, I mean, he's good on certain packages. Even being inside, he's been doing more in the run game than he has the pass game. He's just every game, every pass rush play that you see him, and he's just a step or two too late, and it's just a consistent thing with him. But like I said, at 260, it's really hard to play inside. And I don't know how good that'll end up. Will Sutton's been pretty good. Weirdly enough, he legitimately cannot stay on his feet. It seems like every other play that he's about to get to the quarterback, he's falling down. So the overall line, the talent of the line is a lot better, but the product is right about the same.
Aaron, I got a question for you. All right, I know the Bears' special teams has been pretty bad this year. So on a scale from 1 to 10, how scared are you that Devin Hester is going to pretty much destroy this game?
I have the feeling, and I think a lot of Bears fans have for a while, chances are he's probably going to run one back. Joe DeCamillis was talked about as a top special teams coordinator, and quite frankly, I haven't seen it. Maybe it's because Dave Toub was so.
For a while.
Go ahead, Scott.
He was here in Atlanta for a while. He did a great job under Dan Reeves back in, the Stone Ages.
Yeah.
The 90s.
And that's where my other question is with the Bears, and mainly with Mark Trestman, is he doesn't seem to have a very good value on special teams. He doesn't, 7 out of the 11 top tacklers that we had on special teams last year are gone. We brought in guys like Jordan Sin, who didn't even make the first cut. We've had a few guys go out, different things like that. So I think overall it's improving. The worst part of the special team so far has been the Bears' return game. It's been a revolving door. They had Trendon Holiday that came in today for a workout. He's been having hamstring issues, so I'm not really sure. They have Chris Williams back there right now, so that's been more of a concern. But there was a play in the Carolina game last week where they scored their first touchdown, open up the scoring, and Teddy Williams goes down and just obliterates the return man after he called for a fair catch. The ball didn't even hit his hands, and he just destroyed the guy. The guy gets back up, picks the ball up. Once again, the Bears with no awareness whatsoever, picks the ball up and runs it back for a touchdown. I mean, it's simple things like that. If you don't have enough awareness in that type of situation, then what's going to happen with a very emotional Devin Hester that has got better speed than anybody on your team?
Yeah.
So I'm looking for a punt return touchdown, a kick return touchdown, a receiving touchdown, and a rushing touchdown, all in the same game by Devin Hester, because that would make me very happy.
That would not make me very happy, So I'm hoping that doesn't happen, but I do expect a big game from him. I think you can look at an example last week. Greg Olsen, the former tight end for the Bears, good friend of Jay Cutler's, first round pick for the Bears. Mike Martz came in, they traded him away. And they held him pretty well there for a little bit, and then he ended up, having a pretty monster game. And that's just something I've noticed with the Bears. A lot of former players seem to come in and just absolutely destroy them. So on a normal day, I wouldn't be too concerned with how they're gonna look, against the kick return. But this week is definitely a concern for me. I think Devin Hester is going to play a big role all the way around, not just on special teams.
He's gotten pretty close to taking 2 back the last 2 weeks. So basically a punter stopped him one time, and I think both times the punter basically saved the touchdown. So I'm sure
the punter just got in the way, and Hester tried juking and accidentally hit the sideline. It was like, damn it, I hit the sideline. And he knew he hit the sideline even though he didn't see his foot hit the sideline. He just knew because he's Devin Hester. And it's punt returns. It's what he does.
Yeah. I got another question for you, Aaron. This one has been racking my brain for about 3 years, so I'm glad I finally have a Bears insider that can answer this question. How does Chris Conte still collect an NFL paycheck?
Oh man, it's funny because I'm gonna be honest and say that I was a Conte supporter for most of the offseason, first part of the year. Now, in 2011 and 2012, I felt that he served the purpose of the defense quite well. The cover 2, just a nice zone defense, with Lovie Smith. Last year, I'm not sure I've ever seen a safety have as bad of a year as he did. And maybe it was just, I don't know. Maybe it was just feeling sorry for the guy because all the death threats and the different things that he had. That was just terrible. But this year he's really showed he looked pretty good in the first game. It went out with an injury, and here's the thing: is he's had 2 concussions over the past 7 weeks, and he's had 4 injuries over the past 7 weeks. He's re-injured his shoulder twice. He's playing over his head, and I do like Pro Football Focus for some of their resources. I think sometimes their grades it's just an opinion, just like anything. But I think going back and looking at his grades, really it shows he's terrible against the run. If you're expecting him to make an open field tackle one-on-one with somebody, it's not going to happen. And quite frankly, he really hasn't been that good in pass coverage. So I think this will be his last year. I really did root for the guy, especially coming out. It doesn't really help when you have shoulder surgery halfway through the offseason, rush it back, and then come back. I am a little confused on why Brock Vereen is not starting at free safety. I think having 2 strong safeties, I've never really been a big fan of Ryan Mundy. And then you have Danny McCray, and they've been putting both of them out there, regardless if they're interchangeable or not. They've suffered. So I think, to answer your question, I think Chris Conte will probably go elsewhere after the year's over with. I don't think anybody in their right mind would want to stay in Chicago after what he had to endure. But yeah, it's getting to a point where I think you got to come to the realization that he's just not very good. And he came from the Jerry Angelo era, so it's not like Phil Emery has anything to hold on to with him. It's just, once again, just not a player that panned out.
Okay. All right. I mean, I just thought he was really bad last year, and it was shocking to me how he basically got his starting job back. And I guess that's part of the Bears' issue, because I've noticed over the years that pretty much ever since Mike Brown left, they really had a revolving door of mediocre safeties. And it seems like that continues to be the case. And now that you have Danny McCray, who's about as mediocre as they come.
Yeah, all you got to do is you got to watch the Greg Olsen touchdown that won him the game last week, and you can just see he's just lost. He's a strong safety that they're putting. I don't even know why they're putting him in in single high looks, and and that's once again going back to questioning how well of a understanding Mel Tucker really has for this defense. But yeah, I think. I don't expect Conte to play this week with it being his 2nd concussion in 7 weeks, kind of like Jeremiah Ratliff. He got the concussion. He's been out. This is going on his 4th week, so we'll see if he comes back. But I don't expect him to start this week. You probably see Danny McCray, which is great for you guys. Not so great for the Bears. But yeah, I think this offseason you could really look and see that they just didn't put a very high value on safety. And in this day and age, I think that's a giant mistake. And you can look at the results of what the Bears have done over the past 2 years with Major Wright, Chris Conte, Ryan Mundy, mediocre to bad safeties, and just realize how bad they've really been, how many yards they've given up. So it's something that's going to have to change. I've been saying it for a while now. I think Mel Tucker could end up being the downfall of Mark Trestman's era here in Chicago, but they gotta make the right decisions, and one of the right decisions right now is definitely keeping Conte out. He's doing nothing but hurting himself, and he's playing over his head, and it's just not a good combination.
So I don't understand how the Falcons get all these good safeties like Kamal Ishmael and Desmond Southward has looked good, and the Bears haven't even wanted to invest in it if they play all the soft zone. It doesn't make sense.
Well, it doesn't. It really doesn't. I've tried figuring it out for a while. I mean, you look at the free agents this year, and they had shots at different people. They had the money, and that's the thing with obviously the cap space is very fluid to begin with. They had the ability to create more space. I mean, they went into the season with almost $6 million in extra cap space. Obviously you want to keep a few million of that to be able to kind of run, especially with the way the Bears churn the bottom of their roster. I don't know how much you guys keep up with that, but they're constantly running guys in and out, especially the bottom five guys. But yeah, it's just you take a look at it, and unfortunately, with the way the draft fell this year, you get the top 4 safeties all going in the first round. Really kind of screwed him over. I don't think they were too high on Terrence Brooks. Brock Vereen is a guy that has never really been a set safety. I mean, he's been a good defensive back at Minnesota, but he's been, anywhere from corner to safety. So I'm not really sure that he's ever going to be a guy that can come in and start. But, there's still guys out on the, get Chris Clemens out on the free agent market. I'm not really sure why the Texans decided to cut him. But I'm a little curious as to why the Bears didn't even give him a look.
We wondered that here in Atlanta when William Moore went hurt. But, Ishmael played pretty well, so...
So did Southward, man. That's the thing. When the 2 guys who everybody was questioning play pretty well, and you realize Atlanta just needs a pass rush and better play from their interior guys, it makes sense. And to stop playing Jonathan Babineau at defensive end. That's my crusade, man. I love Jonathan Babineau, but even he would probably tell you, I have no idea why I'm playing right defensive end in a 4-3 alignment.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he would. Yeah. All right.
This way, through a player's agent, I've heard Babineau has no idea why he's playing the 7-tech. Tyson Jackson has no idea why he's playing the 3-tech, because he would much rather play a 5 or a 6-tech like what they told him he was going to play.
See, that didn't make any sense to me either. Tyson Jackson is not a 3-tech.
I mean, from what they told Tyson Jackson, he was playing left end and rotating with Malachi Goodman. It hasn't exactly happened like that.
No.
Between signing and training camp, things are completely different. And even in training camp, they were playing Tyson Jackson at left end, and they were playing Goodman, or they were playing Babineau at 3-tech, up until someone got injured. I don't even remember who, and then Tyson Jackson moved to a 3-tech. Or no, they were covering for Corey Peters for a week during practices, and that's what happened. It was stupid. There was no reason for Jackson to play 3-tech.
So have the Falcons, have they been playing more 4-3 than they have 3-4 then?
They don't play either. They play 4-2-5.
Wow.
They play nickel every play.
Okay.
You put out 4 wide receivers, they'll play a nickel. You put out 2 wide receivers, they'll play a nickel. You put out 22 personnel, they'll play a nickel.
So they've essentially committed to just being using a sub package as their base package.
Yeah.
Sub package is their base package with the wrong guys playing the wrong roles.
Yeah, that doesn't sound very very successful.
Which is why when people go, oh, well, the Falcons don't have the talent, I hate to break it to you. How can you really evaluate the talent when you're putting the talent out of position in the wrong role in the first place?
Well, the Falcons spent big money on Tyson Jackson, if I remember right, so I don't understand why they would go out of their way to put him...
Tyson Jackson's making $2 million this year. They could bench him if they really wanted to and cut him after this year and save money, but they probably aren't going to. But they could do it if they really absolutely wanted to.
See, I thought Jackson was making more in the 5 or 6 range. I don't know why I thought that.
His average salary is in the 5 and 6 range, but if they cut him after June 1st this year, they save, get this, $2.25 million in 2015 and $1.55 million in 2016. And if this coaching staff gets cut, Tyson Jackson's going with it.
Yeah. He's tied to this coaching staff very much.
And that's the same issue the Bears run into on the offensive side of the ball as well. You know, if Mark Trestman goes and Cutler's still got 2 years left of guaranteed money after this year, and Brandon Marshall's got a little over 2 as well. So it sounds to me like both teams are in pretty similar positions here. Maybe this is just pessimistic on my part, but I feel is if the Falcons have a higher ceiling and a better chance to turn it around than the Bears do at this point in time.
Interesting. So is Trestman really on the hot seat like that already in year 2?
I haven't really heard any confirmations either way, but Phil Emery doesn't mess around, and he moves quick with different things. So I mean, obviously, if they finish 8-8 again, or anywhere in that area, he'll be back for a third season. And chances are he'll get a third season. But with the way that the team's been playing lately, there's not many teams that they can beat right now. Playing their current state. So, and it's crazy to look at because you go back and you look at the Carolina game last week, and I mean they were a missed catch away from being up 28-7 going into halftime, and they go after two drop pass and then a missed field goal, they go into the half 21-14. They hadn't given up a halftime lead in 15 games, and that happened. So there's just something, the bad coaching decisions, bad play calling on both sides. I don't think Mel Tucker was ever the answer, but they had a chance to cut bait with him going into this offseason, and they chose not to. They brought in different position coaches around him, but like I said, it could eventually lead to Mark Trestman's downfall. I think I'm sure his seat's heating up a little bit. I don't think if they bomb the year and go 4-12 or 5-11, then he's probably gone. But realistically, the Bears will probably do just enough to get a average draft pick and get somebody that miss out on somebody that they could have got. So we'll see.
Oh, good old draft purgatory. We know it well, don't we?
Yeah. All right, Scott, you want to do these mailbag questions before we get out of here?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
All right, Aaron, sit tight. We don't have a whole lot, as much as we usually have, and there are not a whole lot of Bears-centric questions. They're just, woe is me. Smorgasbord Night, his first question, probably not that serious, but why am I still following this train wreck organization?
I am not your psychiatrist.
It's easy. That's why. It's a whole lot harder to switch teams at this point in your life. Once you're, I don't know however old he is, but I'm sure he's a grown man, and it's just easy to keep rooting for the same bad team over and over again.
Let's put it this way: if you're a Falcons fan and you've stuck with being a Falcons fan for more than the past 10 years, you are a glutton for punishment at this point.
Pretty much.
I mean, that's about the only way I know how to explain it. You're just a glutton for punishment. Welcome to Falcon fandom. Welcome to the crap hole that is being a Falcons fan. We get to see a team let us down every single solitary year in new and exciting ways.
Yep. Now it's they get good and then they let you down. So that's different from pretty much the previous 40 years. So I guess that's better.
Well, last year was fun because it was like, haha, we suck again.
Yeah, and it looks like this season may, unless things turn around pretty quickly, it may turn in the same way. But Smorgasbord Night has another question. He says, seriously, do you expect Smitty to drop playtime for rookies in desperation to save his job/season?
I think if he wants to save his job, he should start playing rookies and second-year and third-year players more, not less.
Yeah, I agree.
Because that's how he's going to save his job, by playing guys who aren't these decrepit old men like Croy Bierman and O.C. Menioria, who are just absolutely useless at this point in their careers. Play the guys who are those rookies, those sophomores, those juniors, those, basically what they are at this point, and let them have the ball. Let them get out there. Hell, they just called up Freddie Martino. I'd love to see Freddie Martino out there on offense instead of Harry Douglas. Probably provide more. He's much quicker. He burned the defense for a touchdown against Jacksonville. Yeah, it was Jacksonville, but it was Matt Ryan throwing him the ball. Or not Matt Ryan, it was TJ Yates, but still, same kind of ball. Yeah. Not like either one's got a cannon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
say go for it. Play the rookies because that's how you win.
Yeah, I think at a certain point, he can't get away with playing the veterans. I think, I guess my hope, this is me being pessimistic again, I guess, but I don't see him making a major change probably until the bye week. I think he's going to ride or die with these veteran guys for the next, 3 games, and then we'll see the change made. And then we'll suddenly see an improvement after the bye week, and then everybody will be like, oh, how did the Falcons figure it out? And it's like, oh, because, you put guys, under the age of 26 that actually have speed on the field and can make plays, chase guys,
See, and Aaron, that's why I always get aggravated when you make the argument that Falcons linebackers don't have speed. No, there's 2 guys doing the job of 3, so they're going to look slow. Or there's 3 guys doing the job of 4, so they're going to look slow.
I think Shimbo's still slow, but okay. We can argue with that.
Slow laterally, I'll agree with you there, but at least he's looking good in coverage.
Yeah.
He and Warlow have looked great in coverage the last 2 games.
Yeah, it helps when
you 5 targets.
8 yards at pop in the run game that, you can find something to do.
You can't completely blame that on the linebackers, though.
I'm messing with you, Scott. I'm messing with you.
I'm just saying you can't completely blame that on the linebackers.
No, the defensive line is playing horrible. They're not controlling gaps at all.
If your defensive line's not controlling any gaps, and your defensive coordinator's not saying, oh, let's go back to a 1-gap system and actually just, hey, you attack this gap, hey, you attack this gap, hey, you attack. When you have guys sitting there attacking gaps instead of attacking players at the line, the defense will run better. But I digress.
All right. Jesse Lalamindra, he says, what realistic trade option is out there for the Falcons for a pass rusher that can make an immediate impact for the Falcons this year?
Oof. Brandon Graham would be fun. I think he'd be a good fit. I'd like to see him in Atlanta, but I think it's a very unlikely situation that Atlanta actually goes out and gets him. But he's having a monster year up in Philly. He looks really good as a pass rusher. Hell, bring in Trent Cole, too. I'd be down for that. Man, that's a tough question. Those are the top 2 guys that I would bring in, that I would go after. Cornell McPhee in Baltimore. He doesn't play as many snaps. He lost a lot of weight from when he was a rookie, because he came into the league as a 310-pound rookie, and now he's like 260, 270 fast.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe go after Justin Houston, who's playing out of his skull right now, just because it's Justin Houston. And had the Falcons had a 2nd-round pick in 2011 and not had to give it up to the Browns, which I'm surprised they still had to give it up to the Browns because it's the Browns. Had they still had that 2nd-round pick, Justin Houston was going to be that 2nd-round pick. And could you imagine this team with Houston and Julio? It'd be ridiculous. They should have also gone out and gotten Elvis Dumervil back when the fax thing happened. But that never happened. I mean, there's a lot of lost opportunity here that I'm looking on this list. If Melvin Ingram was healthy, they should have gone out and gotten him. They should make a play for Derek Morgan. That'd be fun to see. Could also make a play for Brian Orakpo, who's not having a great season out in Washington, but, they got the money to bring him in. Jason Babin from the Jets would be fun. I mean, pretty much anybody not named, Croy Bierman should be playing that linebacker spot.
Well, a guy I wanted them to trade for 2 years ago was Willie Young, and unfortunately the Bears got him. So, maybe we can
I don't see the Bears relinquishing Willie Young. And Willie Young has been doing wonders from my IDP League fantasy team as a 7.5 point a game defensive lineman, which is unheard of right now. Anyway, Jabal Shiard is the other name. I would love to see Jabal Shiard. I wanted him back in 2012 when they were drafting. Sorry, 2011 when he came out for the draft. But, again, Falcons didn't have a 2nd-round pick that year. So.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo similar sentiments as you, Scott. I don't think it's probably likely that the Falcons will make a trade, even though I think it's the most no-brainer decision that they could possibly make. Um, but I would say of the implausible guys that they could trade for, I'd probably say Graham is probably the most likely, since I think Philadelphia is probably the team most willing to part ways with a player just in general. So I'd probably say Brandon Graham is the most likely, if anybody's likely.
I'd agree with that.
All right, Scott. Last one. This is a draft question.
Oh,
Andrew
fun.
Schauweiler asks, I was looking at mock drafts this year and read something that I thought was interesting. They had the Falcons taking Cooper from Alabama and saying the Falcons need to go into free agency for defense and take the best talent in the draft. What do you guys think?
I mean, if you go out and you get Justin Houston and you get Brian Arakpo and you say bye-bye to Bierman and Croy, I'd be down for that, especially if you sign Julius Thomas at tight end. I'd be happy with that offensive line. Jake Matthews, Justin Blaylock, Joe Hawley, John Asamoah, and then a battle to the death between Sam Baker, Lamar Holmes, and Gabe Carimi for right tackle. I'd be down with that. I'd be perfectly happy with that offensive line. I'd be perfectly happy with the wide receiver situation of Julio Jones, Roddy White, Amari Cooper, Harry Douglas, Devin Hester, whoever the hell else they want to bring in. Hell yeah, do that. And then tight end, go out and get Julius Thomas or Jordan Cameron, who are both going to be available unless both teams magically re-sign them. The Falcons have the ability to go out and really improve their offense this offseason while still going out and improving the defense. They should have a minimum of $20 million in cap, potentially more. They could re-sign Julio Jones. The cap could go up to $150. There's a lot of different things. And if the Falcons start out with that much and they cut a couple guys, it could be a very interesting offseason in Atlanta with a very similar retooling to the 2012 season as opposed to I don't know. I think it's going to be closer to a 2012 season if they bring in some edge rushers, especially if they bring in Justin Houston and Brian Arakpo. That'd be fun. That would be a fun defense to watch.
I think, targeting defense in free agency and going after the best available in the draft is a pretty good strategy. As for Cooper specifically, I'm a big Amari Cooper fan. I think it's going to be a great NFL player. But my personal preference is I generally am not a fan of taking wide receivers in the first round, especially if they're going to be the number 2 wide receiver like Cooper would be here in Atlanta. I think you kind of can get a player that can do a little bit more at another position, take another offensive lineman, take a defensive lineman, take a DB or somebody like that. In general, if the Falcons are looking to draft a wide receiver high, which they probably will be, given how everybody not named Julio Jones is really, really old at this point, I'd probably wait until the second round and maybe Cooper tweaks his ankle or something and falls in the draft, kind of like Alshon Jeffrey did a couple of years ago. So
I'd be okay with that, but in that case, if you go best player available and somebody magically falls, if that's somebody's potential Heisman winner, Todd Gurley, or it's Melvin Gordon, and you're picking, mid-first round and you want that big impact, hate to say it, Steven Jackson's done. Stick a fork in him. He's useless. He's absolutely useless. I'd bench him at this point outside of short yardage plays.
I wouldn't go that far, but I think
you get better production out of Devontae Freeman or Jacquizz Rodgers on first, second, and third down per touch. You get way better production. You're looking at 6 yards per touch versus 4 yards per touch.
Some of that Freeman production is padded at the end of the garbage time at the end of games.
Maybe it was padded at garbage time at the end of the games, But then you also have to look at the end of the Tampa Bay game. It was also hurt because he had like 10 touches for 12 yards.
I don't want to knock Freeman. I think ball security is an issue with him a little bit right now. But I think Jackson's been playing well. I think Jackson's one of probably 3 players that have consistently played well each game. Besides Julio Jones and Desmond Trufant on the team. So I don't really have any issue with what Steven Jackson is doing right now. Will it last the rest of the season? We'll see. But I'm fine with what he's doing. I think other guys need to get more touches, but I think the reason why they're not getting more touches is not because Steven Jackson is hogging the ball. It's because the Falcons get behind in every game and they just got to start throwing the ball every time. And they don't ever get the chance to play with a lead and run the football.
I also think that if they got a chance to play with a lead and run the ball, Jackson would be the wrong guy to do it anyway.
Okay.
Because I think if you want to play with the lead and run the ball, you still don't give Jackson 25 carries. He's not that back anymore. I did a regression on him, a per-touch regression that I posted on Twitter, and the basic situation is once he gets the touch, touch 11, his average per touch goes from 4 yards to 3 to 2 to 1 every touch after that. So it's pointless to get him the ball after 11 touches. I'd cap him at 10 just to make sure that he's fresh. And then give the ball to Antone Smith. Give the ball to Devontae Freeman. Give the ball to Jacquizz Rodgers. Hell, let Jacquizz Rodgers get something going. Because he obviously hasn't had any touches to do so.
Yep.
He probably plays the most snaps on offense for the Falcons out of any of the 3 running backs. And yet, he has the least amount of touches between the 4 backs. Sorry, outside of Antone Smith, because Antone Smith is criminally underrated and criminally underused.
As a receiver, I would agree with Antone Smith. I think he's getting about the right amount of carries. I don't think he's a very good running back. But I think what the Falcons need to do with Antone, they need to get more screens to him. He's only had 2 screens this whole season. That's criminal. He needs to get a lot more option routes because pretty much every time he gets a check down, he takes it to the house like 60 yards. So they need to design more plays for that. They need to give him wheel routes where he can just fly and just roast linebackers and safeties. So I agree that Antone's
how to play wide receiver.
I think give him the ball in space.
Make him a wide receiver. Change his number to 15. Fuck it.
Yeah, I'm for it. All right, Aaron. We appreciate you coming on. I know people can find you on Twitter at Aaron Leming NFL. Is that 1 M or 2?
It's 1.
Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. It's been fun. I'm hoping for my sake that things turn around, but definitely not too optimistic. But I think we can all agree that it's probably going to be a probably going to be an offensive shootout.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it'll be fun though.
Yeah, it'll be good. Bears Falcons usually entertaining.
I agree. So yeah, we'll definitely see what happens. Best of luck. Best of luck for you guys. Not only in the game but the rest of the season. And worst case scenario, best of luck in the draft and free agency because that's what I'm gonna start looking at with another loss or 2.
Yeah, we almost hit that point though.
I'm normally there before the season, just because. Yeah, I'm an optimist, but I'm always looking towards the future because I'm a Falcons fan.
So next year's always better.
Next year always is better.
Until next year happens, and then it gets worse.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm Scott Karasik. You can find Aaron Freeman at FalcFans. You can find me at Scott Karasik. Have a good night, everybody.